And stay down. Got a minute?
No, not for you. I really have nothing more to say.
What if I told you it's looking more and more likely Ihara-san had a hand in Mikoshiba's death?
Well, it doesn't concern me.
Ihara-san believes Mikoshiba tormented Toshiro-kun so badly that he took his own life. But neither the third-party investigation nor the courts were on his side. So what's the truth here? You know, don't you? What really happened between Mikoshiba and Toshiro-kun? Why won't you tell me the truth?
Why do you keep asking? I said I don't know!
I'm going to the detention center tomorrow to get some answers out of Ihara-san.
What?
I saw where Mikoshiba was murdered. He endured no shortage of cruelty before he died. They tortured him, you know. They broke all his fingers before they slit his throat.
No.
And somehow Ihara-san knew Mikoshiba would be killed on the day he got caught for groping. It's like he did it to prove he had nothing to do with the murder. But maybe that wasn't his real objective at all.
Huh?
I think he wanted to signal that he'd finally avenged his son.
The body belongs to a guy named Hiro Mikoshiba. 4 years ago, this man took my son from me by driving him to commit suicide.
If I'm gonna face him tomorrow, I can't go in without some ammunition. So, 4 years ago, did Mikoshiba bully Toshiro-kun or not? That's all I want to know.
My answer won't change. There's no evidence Mikoshiba-kun did anything wrong.
Are you sure about that? Take a look at this.
That's...
Toshiro Ihara, your student. Imagine that he's listening to what you're saying now. If you can look at him and say Mikoshiba played no part in his death, I'll leave you alone. In fact, you'll never hear a word from me again. So which is it?
"4 years ago, not long after I'd transferred here to teach English. That's when it started. I was trying my best to get acclimated, and I was finally on a first-name basis with everyone. One day, after school, I was out on the roof taking a break, when Toshiro-kun suddenly ran by. I called out to him to ask what was wrong, but he shushed me and kept running. I saw he had a bloody nose. Moments later, Mikoshiba-kun showed up. He was looking for him. I told him I hadn't seen him. Toshiro-kun's face told me everything I needed to know.
So Mikoshiba was bullying him after all.
Yes. Toshiro-kun told me this later on. Whenever he'd leave school with Mikoshiba-kun and his friends, they'd force him to hand over money. At first, they'd try to pass it off as a joke. They said since he lowered the class average on tests, he ought to buy them all drinks as an apology. And Mikoshiba-kun, he was having too much fun with it to stop. He started offering tutoring sessions to Toshiro-kun. Only so he and his crew could extract their tuition from him. They'd even break into his house while his mother was at work and take the money she left him for dinner. And if he couldn't pay, they'd beat him up at school or make him grovel in the bathroom.
Didn't anybody see what was really happening?
The teachers either saw nothing or turned a blind eye. Few students knew about it, though. Anyway, I ended up relaying everything Toshiro-kun had told me to those boys' homeroom teacher. Mind you, this teacher had tenure, title, and years of experience under his belt. Do you know what he told me? He said not to cause a commotion because those boys were about to graduate.
Why does that not surprise me?
To be honest, it was hard to paint such an outwardly model student in a negative light. There was also no hard evidence to support Toshiro-kun's story. But someone still should have stepped in to help. If only I'd understood that at the time.
You tried.
The only thing I tried was to keep an eye out for him, making sure he wasn't alone, things like that. But unfortunately, that wasn't good enough. On the first morning of the third trimester, Toshiro-kun tied a towel to his doorknob and hung himself in his room.
And that's when you confronted Mikoshiba, right? You asked him point blank if he'd bullied him.
I did. Mikoshiba-kun pretended to know nothing. He was more careful, shaken even, from then on. In all honesty, when I heard a third-party committee was investigating, I was hoping the truth would come out. Students were asked to fill out an anonymous questionnaire, and many of them wrote down exactly what they saw.
Hold on. Didn't the court end up declaring there was no substantial evidence of bullying? How could they have said that with those questionnaires on hand?
First of all, the committee never interviewed anyone directly. Those questionnaires were the only proof of anything. And the teacher of those boys was the one who collected them. Each time he came across any mention of bullying, he'd toss that questionnaire out. Also, he wouldn't get blamed in the end for ignoring the warning signs.
So then the committee was pointless.
A few students did speak up about the bullying online, but their posts weren't much to go on. Toshiro-kun's parents were completely caught off guard. His mother worked through the day, and his father lived all the way in Tokyo. That made it that much easier for the teacher to cover up all the evidence of bullying. He made that statement without even consulting the principal or the chairman. So, right before Mikoshiba-kun graduated, the committee presented their findings. That there was no evidence of bullying. The conclusion you've heard over and over.
What the hell?
In Japan, 300 children commit suicide every year, across all grades. Less than 3% are proven to be linked to bullying. Toshiro-kun's case ended up like that too. But Ehara-san wasn't satisfied with those findings. So he sued Seiryo High, demanding compensation for Toshiro-kun's death. As the trial dragged on, I was eventually called to the witness stand. Of course, my intention was to let everything I knew out into the open. But before that could happen, that damn teacher came with the school's attorney to see how I would testify.
They didn't want you making them look bad, huh?
Of course not. That's when I first learned what he did with those incriminating questionnaires. They had no choice but to reveal everything to me, to try and sway me to their side. I guess they were just that desperate. After all, I was the only adult who Toshiro-kun confided in. I don't think he'd spoken to his parents about it once. So yes, that's why there was never any objective evidence of bullying. It wasn't like I had a mind to record our conversations. And I hadn't personally witnessed it either. The school attorney saw fit to remind me that the law says innocent until proven guilty. And if I couldn't produce tangible evidence, then I shouldn't be accusing Mikoshiba-kun.
So it was witness tampering. That is, they coerced you into false testimony?
Yes.
It must have been incredibly hard on you.
What I should have done was told the truth regardless. But what else could I have really done for him? Some days I just don't know. As much as I've tried to convince myself I did everything I could for him, I can never fully believe it.
So what happened to the teacher who covered all this up?
He transferred to another school. God, to think he's still standing at a podium somewhere.
That's unfortunate.
Even so, I don't have the right to place the blame solely on him.
Maybe, but in that case, Mikoshiba's bullying of Toshiro, or those questionnaires getting discarded. Have you ever told anyone else?
No. I've been silent. Yagami-san, you know what? Back when I was a student in high school, I witnessed bullying firsthand. There was this kid. My classmates pushed him too far. And one day he just jumped off the roof.
Off the roof?
By some miracle, he survived the fall. And he's been in a coma for the last 13 years. Nobody knows if he'll ever wake up. His name is Mitsuru, and he may never open his eyes to the world again. His mom watches him, but she works full-time. She's a higher-up in the government.
I'm sorry to hear it.
The worst part is that his teacher knew. He even talked to the bullies about it. But all he said was, don't overdo it. But afterward, the public eviscerated him. He had to quit his teaching job. And yet, for poor Toshiro-kun, nobody was held responsible at all. And that includes me.
But if anyone was going to take responsibility for that, Mikoshiba should have been first in line. I'm sure Ihara-san must have thought the same thing.
You know what I wanted to be as a kid? I was so innocent, I wanted to be a teacher. And after Mitsuru-kun's tragedy, I felt practically obligated. And still, I just let history repeat itself.